You have no comeback aside from insulting my physical appearance and the fact that I'm a woman. Wow, you're really smart, aren't you? And I mean, really, you shouldn't be talking about looks, sweetie. I mean, come on. And then he says, women log off. Well, sweetheart, clearly it bothers you so much, so I'm gonna stay on just because it pisses you off. It's funny to me because both Republicans and conservatives really don't want you on this app. They don't support your ideology because it's inherently hateful. I mean, you can think that you're a real Republican, but all the Republicans that I've talked to aren't misogynistic or inherently hateful. But you are. And I will say, numerous Republicans say that my opinion matters and that I do have an opinion, but they don't seem to think that yours does, so maybe you're projecting a little. So why don't you take your own advice and log off, you alt-right scum?
Right, so in the previous 2 installments, we've been looking at Nick Fuentes, his association with Baked Alaska, Catboy Cammy, and then his connection to Milo, the confirmed federal informant. We've worked out that Milo built the website, he has the back end, and that all of the Groyper's information, their doxes, their addresses, their names, their birth dates, and all of their payment details are being harvested. Not just by Fuentes so he can give them merchandise, but the FBI as well, because Milo has access to that site. And Milo is the one that's handling all of the information. And what do you think Milo's going to do with that information? Well, of course, he's going to pass it to the FBI, his handlers now. So we've established that. It's been a crazy ride. But I want to touch on something that we didn't really get into in the last installment, and that is the money. The big money that bankrolled Milo, that might be bankrolling Fuentes. We're going to be looking at who Milo was and his downfall, because it's incredibly important for this segment of the story. So stick with me, folks. It's going to be fucking wild.
A young alt-right agitator named Milo Yiannopoulos has announced that he wants to buy 4chan, the controversial message board where internet trolling was born. That would be the same Milo Yiannopoulos who was accused of inciting the movement on Twitter to savage the actress Leslie Jones, star of the new Ghostbusters movie. The actress was so distraught she ended up closing her Twitter account. In response to the harassment, Twitter permanently banned Milo. Correspondent Ben Bryant caught up with him on a speaking tour in London to find out if he really is the world's biggest asshole.
It really cannot be overstated how prevalent Milo was back in 2016 and early 2017. He was everywhere. He was on top of the mountain, as it were. And it seemed artificial at the time. It seemed as though he was being crowbarred into lots of things. Artificially being created as a leader of the alt-right. This was the case back in the day, right? This was the case. They had Milo Yiannopoulos going around doing college tours, doing speaking events, calling himself the dangerous faggot. And he was the new face of conservatism. That's what he branded himself on. That's what he claimed to be. And he had quite a sizable amount of support. Milo really was a mainstream figure, almost a celebrity who'd broken through from the depths of Gamergate. And he was maggering. He was pepeing. He was throwing Romans. People didn't know how to comprehend Milo. This was the case. But Milo's star couldn't rise forever. It had to come down, and it did. Back in 2017, there was a scandal that cost Milo a headlining gig at CPAC. It essentially brought Milo's career to an end. And the whole scandal centered upon Milo saying that he thought sex between younger boys and older men could be a coming-of-age relationship. Milo's words that sunk his entire career. All of his college tours, they fell apart. He struggled from there on out to gain any sort of traction. And most importantly, he lost his patronage from the Mercers. Now, the Mercers were the ones that were giving Milo big sums of money. They were the ones that were bankrolling him to your screens. They were the ones that were making Milo almost omnipresent. He was everywhere, and he was made everywhere by the Mercers. The Mercers were giving Milo big money. Now, this is Robert Mercer, back in the day, Milo's biggest sponsor.
Hedge fund operator Robert Mercer is the third most generous Republican donor this cycle and has cut checks for a total of $37 million over the past 6 years. In fact, this year he gave more to the Koch brothers organization, the Freedom Partners Action Fund, than the Koch brothers themselves. So who is Robert Mercer? Well, Annie Linsky of Bloomberg News profiled him in a recent article and joins us now. And Annie, he is not very well known. We know Sheldon Adelson. We know the Koch brothers. But how influential has he been, and who is this man?
But once Milo got caught up in those child abuse comments, suddenly the mega donor Robert Mercer, he wrote a letter just slamming, eviscerating, murking Milo and disavowing him completely, withdrawing his backing. In that letter, Mercer stated that he supported Milo in the hope and expectation that his expression of views contrary to the social mainstream and his spotlighting of the hypocrisy of those who would close down free speech in the name of political correctness would promote the type of open debate and freedom of thought that is being throttled on many American college campuses today. But in his opinion, the actions and statements of Milo have caused pain and divisiveness, undermining the open and productive discourse that he had hoped to facilitate. So that was Mercer's disavowal. That was Mercer withdrawing the big money from Milo. And that's the reason why Milo was languishing. He really was languishing. He wasn't able to do anything really of success. He didn't really have a Twitter. He got relegated to Telegram. None of his videos were getting any sort of traction at all. No views. The audience had just sort of gone. It had fallen away. So Milo was in the gutter. He was irrelevant. He was yesterday's man. He had been relegated to posting on Telegram and making the occasional YouTube video. However, that fall from relevance was interrupted in 2019 when an effort to rehabilitate Milo began. He was given interviews, given favourable coverage, and given a home within the Groyper movement. He was even invited by Nicholas J. Fuentes to do very helpful work behind the scenes, designing his website.
And he's been supportive. He's been supportive of what we did during the Groyper Wars, and behind the scenes, he's done some favors that have been very helpful. You know, with this website, I'll just tell you straight up, with the website we're building, he has helped immensely with that.
For this reason, it is important to look at who kept Milo around and who was responsible for rehabilitating Milo's image. Because let's not forget, without Nick Fuentes, Milo would be a long, distant, and happily forgotten memory.
It's just that these folks are coming out and they're enjoying the show about what's happening.
Now, this is where things are going to get really fucking good. We've brought the big money into play now. We've established Milo's connection with the Mercers, and we've established that it's probably Nick Fuentes who rehabilitated Milo, picked him up from the gutter and rehabilitated him. We have to ask, why? Why would Nick do such a thing? Do we believe that Nick recognized that Milo used to be tied to all of this big money? He was connected. Maybe Nick knew he was a Fed. Or is a Fed. And so Nick decided to align himself very closely with Milo. For what purpose? What purpose could it serve to be tied to Milo, a man who's known by multi-billionaires and hedge fund managers? A man who is in bed with the FBI. Why would that be beneficial to Nicholas J. Fuentes? So join me as we continue our voyage, our odyssey through this craziness, because it keeps getting worse with every single detail. We're going to be looking now at the AF pack.
Groyper! 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 Groyper!
The night after CPAC, the annual Conservative Political Action Conference, a very different event took place in nearby Washington, D.C. The Groypers held their own event, the America First Political Action Conference, or AFPAC. Now, this photograph has become emblematic of what AFPAC was. A sort of Hobbit's Day Out, a gathering of several autistic gentlemen that are 5 foot and a fag end. But this photograph of Nick Fuentes surrounded by his miniature capos betrays the reality of what AFPAC was. A big political conference that was bankrolled by even bigger money. We don't know who paid for this event. Fuentes never said who paid for it. It'd have been easy for him to declare that the donations of the Groypers paid for this event. But we all know that Fuentes needs all the money he can get because he lives in his mother's basement and flies out catboys from Australia, pays for their Airbnb in order for them to sodomize him. So where did the money come from to organise and fulfil this AFPAC? The way I see it, there are 2 theories corresponding to who funded the AFPAC. 2 substantive theories, backed by evidence, both circumstantial, yet also completely tangible. Everything that I've laid out in this video and the previous 2 videos all lead here, to this AFPAC, to these 2 theories that I'm going to present. Now, I'm presenting the 2 theories simply because each one of them is incredibly convincing, and each one of them could be true, or indeed it could be a mishmash of the 2 theories together. But I think over the course of this investigation, I've come to the conclusion that, well, when we get to the end of presenting the 2 theories, we'll reconvene. And the first one, the second one, each of them is incredibly damning. Who funded the AFPAC? Which of the big money donors funded the AFPAC? Who did this? Throw caution to the wind and join me, for heaven's sake, and join me at the end and press 1 or 2 regarding the best theory being presented. Alright, so the first theory that I wish to put forth involves Milo. Milo isn't the one giving the big money. Milo's broke. But Milo knows people. Milo, who we know had access to people with big money, billionaires like the Mercers. Milo puts Fuentes in contact with them. And Milo presents Fuentes to the Mercers, or people like the Mercers, hedge fund managers, people who want to influence nationalistic movements. He puts them in contact with Fuentes and presents Fuentes as a version of himself. Milo presents Nick as a sort of mini-me figure, a Milo 2.0, who hasn't been racked by a paedophilia scandal and who could be more useful in the current year to these billionaires than Milo is now. So Yiannopoulos is essentially acting as a middleman in this theory. Fuentes being verified on Twitter and having a sizable reach would seem to indicate Mercer involvement, or people with similar money to the Mercers. And perhaps it's people with similar money to the Mercers that have bankrolled this AFPAC. Now, our second theory involves the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI paid for AFPAC and justified the expense as an opportunity to harvest the likeness, addresses, and doxes of all the Groypers in attendance. We already know that the FBI are involved quite heavily with America First because Milo, a confirmed federal informant, has helped Nick build the website where Groypers input their addresses, names, payment details, all sorts to buy merchandise or to watch Nick's back catalogue of videos. Milo will obviously be sharing all of the information he's privy to on the website to the FBI. Anything relevant that he can see on America First will be passed to the FBI, and that information is quite sizable, again, considering that Milo helped build the website and has access to the back end. So in theory too, the FBI pay for AFPAC in order to further strengthen their considerable honeypot. So press 1 if you think it's Milo as the middleman operating as a middleman for the Mercers to funnel money through to Nick Fuentes. Press 2 if you think the FBI paid for AFPAC. The FBI did so to further strengthen their honeypot there that they're gathering on the America First website that their federal informant, Milo Yiannopoulos, is handling for them. Has designed the back end of that website, the America First website for Fuentes, is personally overseeing all of the doxes, payment details, addresses, dates of birth of all of those innocent groypers out there that just want an America First mug, or a sticker, or a signed photo frame of Nick Fuentes in their basements. I'm seeing so many twos. I've never seen this many twos. A lot of people are throwing caution to the wind and just deciding that it's 2. The theory is 2. The FBI paid for AFPAC. The Mercers and Milo. I still think that's an incredibly tangible theory, by the way. And I probably think the truth lies between the 2 theories. But people are saying that the Mercers, it's not the Mercers. People are saying it's purely the FBI and Milo. He's acted as a middleman in both scenarios. What a disaster.
But I'm curious as to whom you think is the best individual or individuals to model themselves off of. That is a big question, Josh, and I'll admit I don't have the full breadth of knowledge I would need to make a recommendation based off of that list of figures. However, what I will say is I've been very impressed with many of the American nationalists, the original America Firsters from the 1920s. Specifically, I've been very impressed reading more about Henry Ford and reading about Charles Lindbergh. Charles Lindbergh is an underrated American hero, famed pilot, and he took the very brave stance at the time of objecting to American involvement in World War II. They did not hide what they believed behind layers of irony or concern for the optics given to them by their oppressors, by those in power at the time. They stood strong for what they believed, and I think that is a very good lesson people can learn today.
And what of Nick's place in all of this? Nick Fuentes, the man at the center of this grand web. He's been given plenty of opportunities to back out, to cut off his association with people like Milo. But remember that Milo keeps a vault of dirt on people for which to blackmail them with later. Fuentes can't back out of his arrangement with Milo, lest a compromising recording is leaked out at some point in the future. Right, so what about Baked? Why doesn't he cut his association with Baked Alaska, who behaves like this?
$1,000 cash, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to the Yoba family. We're giving this to Sammy in about 15 minutes. Let's go!
Well, I wish to bring to your attention now that Fuentes and Baked Alaska have met each other a fair few times, and what we know about when the streams turn off, some crazy shit seems to happen. Look at this photo of Nick Fuentes gazing at a passed-out Baked Alaska, whose head has, for some reason, been covered with a pepe. What's the story behind this photograph? Why is Nick in a towel? Why is Baked passed out on the sofa there? Is this at Nick Fuentes' house? Is it an Airbnb? Is it in some low-rent hotel room? Just why is Nick Fuentes in a towel? This photograph is one of many such compromising situations that Nick Fuentes, leader of the white race, has found himself within, the full details of which just haven't been exposed yet.
I'll dig another one of those. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, I'll dig another one. Dig another one. We never did that, obviously.
Jacket's going off. He is slonking these.
They're really good.
Another one.
All right.
Another one.
Okay.
But surely I hear you cry. Why doesn't Fuentes cut his association with pedophile Catboy Cammy?
Do you have sex with the dog? Can you fit that? Can you fit that bottle in your vagina?
What do you mean,
Well, we were privy to a 12-hour Catboy date where compromising details of Fuentes flying the Catboy out from Australia and paying for his Airbnb with Groiper donations leaked out. The entire 12 hours is sexually charged, and even wacko degenerates like Vaush had their gaydar explode at the sheer homosexuality being displayed.
It was a 10-hour date. 10 hours of uninterrupted, recorded dating content between Nick Fuentes and aforementioned furry Catboy.
Everyone knows that some sort of encounter occurred between Catboy Cami and Fuentes. There's even this photograph of Catboy Cami in bed with somebody who looks suspiciously like Nick Fuentes. It's likely that Fuentes is compromised even further by having a full sex tape of him and this Catboy Cami out there, and he's being blackmailed with it. So these guys all have got dirt on Fuentes. Milo, Baked, Catboy Cami. And so they have power over Nick, the ability to extort, co-opt, and corrupt Fuentes' movement that I'm sure was started with the best of intentions to promote white advocacy, but has now descended into the same sewer that Catboy Cami, Baked Alaska, and Milo Yiannopoulos reside in.
Foreign country, and we're getting all this social liberalism. You know, and I said this before, it's a great idea. You know, these people always talk about 1776 and the United States, and we got a salty Zionist. Yeah, bye, bitch.
It's all pretty fucked up. It's all pretty damning. It's all connected in a grotesque, strange way. There's only one burning question that I need to ask to have settled before I end the video. And it's the burning question that only one thing can actually divine the answer to. Now, this is the segment where I introduce the magic flame yet again, and we ask the magic flame whether or not Nick Fuentes is a federal agent. So, join me as we ask the magic flame that burning question that we all have on our minds. Ooh, magic flame. Is Nicholas J. Fuentes homosexual Mexican child? Is he a Fed? Now we have to wait a second for the flame to get back to us. I hear the flame's voice now.
He's a Fed.
Well, there you have it. What more could you possibly want? A burning answer to our burning question. The magic flame, yet again, has solved this for us. Now press 1 if you want the magic flame to be extinguished and for no more answers to be given. Press 1 if you want to see the light die and we retire into the darkness and the golden age, the golden dawn, shines on us no longer. Press 1 if you want the flame to die. Press 2 if you want the golden age to continue. If you want it to all burn down.
I like to live in America, mucho blanco in America, building a wall in America, Mama's basement is free in America. Buying a Catboy is so nice, with your super chat I can charge twice. I have my own taco machine, good at keeping my nose so clean. Blancos like me in America, green screen room in America, no girls on my stream in America, 12 men in my room in America.